You've probably noticed it yourself. When you ask someone about their religion, more and more often, the answer is, well, nothing. They check the none of the above box. It's a massive cultural shift that's happening right under our noses. So today, we're going to dive deep and really unpack the reasons behind the incredible rise of this group, the people we call the knowns.
So what is going on here? Why are so many people walking away from organized religion? Well, it's not just one simple thing. Think of it more like a giant, complicated puzzle. There are intellectual pieces, social pieces, and some really personal pieces that all fit together to reshape our entire spiritual landscape.
Okay, so first things first. Who exactly are the nones? You might be surprised. Now, sure, this group includes atheists and agnostics, but the biggest chunk? It's people who simply describe their religion as nothing in particular. And that is a crucial point. A lot of these folks aren't necessarily anti-religion. They're just disconnected from the institutions.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the big one, faith versus science and reason. Then we'll get into clashing social values, the deficit of trust in institutions, and the simple question of relevance. And finally, we'll look at what some potential paths forward might look like.
All right, let's kick things off with the big intellectual hurdles. You know, for a lot of us, there's a real, almost constant tension between the way we're taught to see the world today through science and logic and what traditional religious belief asks of us.
And this right here really gets to the core of that conflict. On one side, you have the scientific worldview, which demands hard proof, cold evidence, and logical consistency. But on the other side, you have faith, which is so often about personal experience, transformation, and finding a deeper meaning. For a lot of knowns, these two ways of seeing the world just feel like they're at odds. It feels like you have to pick a side.
So how can religious institutions bridge this gap? Well, the source material suggests a kind of three-part playbook. First, shift the focus to experience. Talk more about how faith can actually change a person's life, not just how you can prove a point. Second, start a real dialogue with science. See it as a partner that deepens our sense of awe, not as an enemy. And third, don't shy away from the tough questions. Engage people intellectually, showing that faith can be a thoughtful journey, not just a blind leap.
Next up is a category that is frankly a deal breaker for a ton of people: clashing social values. This is where a lot of traditional religious teachings collide head-on with modern ideas about ethics and justice.
And one of the biggest flashpoints, without a doubt, is the treatment of LGBTQ+ people. For younger generations especially, a religious institution's stance on this isn't just some side issue. It's often seen as a fundamental moral test of the entire belief system.
So the proposed response here is pretty fundamental. It calls for a real evolution in theology, moving toward interpretations that are openly inclusive and affirming. In practice, that could mean things like performing same-sex marriages or ordaining LGBTQ+ clergy, really putting the emphasis on the core messages of love and justice over condemnation.
Now, another huge social objection centers around gender. For many knowns, seeing patriarchal structures or limits on leadership roles for women, well, it just feels completely out of step with our modern understanding of equality. And the proposed path forward here is a full-throated commitment to egalitarianism. We're talking about not just allowing, but actively promoting women and people of all genders in every area of leadership. And that also means being willing to challenge the traditional scriptural interpretations that have historically held people back. So beyond the big ideas and the social values, there's something else that's a massive factor: personal experience. This next section dives right into the deep deficit of trust that's been created by people's negative and sometimes traumatic experiences with religious institutions.
This table really breaks it down perfectly. When people see hypocrisy, the only answer is genuine authenticity. To address horrible scandals, you need robust safeguards and real restorative justice. When people feel judged, you have to create spaces that are radically welcoming. And for those who are hurt as kids, the focus has to be on healing. It's really about a fundamental shift from causing pain to mending it.
You know, sometimes people don't leave religion because of some big dramatic fight or a deep disagreement. Sometimes they just drift away. And that brings us to the simple but incredibly powerful question of relevance.
This chart does a great job of capturing the different flavors of that indifference. You've got a big slice of people who just don't think religion is important for their day-to-day life. For others, it's totally practical. They just don't have the time. Then there's the group that's just turned off by how political and divisive religion can seem. And finally, you have this huge, growing number of people who say, hey, I'm spiritual, but I just don't need a formal institution for that.
So, how do you fight indifference? Well, you have to prove you're still relevant, and that means showing a real, tangible impact on things like personal well-being and social justice. It means offering flexible ways to get involved that actually fit into a busy modern life. It means focusing on universal ethics instead of partisan politics. And it means becoming a welcoming home for people who are already on their own spiritual journey. Okay, let's pull all of these threads together. When you look at all these deep and varied reasons people are leaving, it becomes pretty clear that we're not talking about minor tweaks here. This all points toward a series of really fundamental shifts that religious institutions would need to make to have a vibrant future.
At the end of the day, 4 big themes really stand out. First, there has to be theological evolution, a willingness to rethink old positions on science and social issues. That has to be paired with way more transparency and accountability to rebuild all that broken trust. From there, it's about creating genuinely radically inclusive communities. And finally, all of it has to result in a tangible, positive impact on people's lives and on the world.
And that leaves us with this final, massive question. As our society keeps grappling with science and justice and where to find personal meaning, the role of organized faith really hangs in the balance. What its future is going to look like? Well, that'll ultimately depend on how or even if it chooses to respond to these challenges.